All right, so let's just dive right into this. I've got a lot of data to share with you. A couple things we're going to cover. Number one is local SEO along with AI search optimization on the local level. Plus, we're going to talk a little bit about answer engine optimization as a whole and some of the misconceptions and myths that are floating around. Okay, so let's just start with the local level first. All right, so for the first thing, we did a very big study, extracted a ton of citations, tons of AI answers for local queries related to personal injury, specifically personal injury lawyers in Chesterfield, Missouri. I like to pick stuff around where I live because it's easier for me to conceptualize. Okay. So, but what I did here is I extracted a ton of stuff. Now, what you're looking at here is if we sort this by platform, what I'm doing is I'm taking every possible place where these entities, these brands are going to be ranking, and I'm trying to find correlations between these different platforms because we know pretty within a lot of certainty at this point that traditional search greatly influences the AI answers. Okay. And I'm going to show you proof of this here in a second. But more importantly, what I did here is these brands here, these are the law firms that consistently showed up across almost every platform. Okay. So there are about 5 law firms here that consistently showed up, not consistently like in certain positions or 100%, but for the most, like among all the other ones, they were the ones that consistently appeared. Okay, so what you can do here is you can start to see some interesting things start to unfold. So for me, I just get real geeky about this, and I like love analyzing these things. Maybe it's a kind of a weird obsession here, but I just love seeing these connections. Okay, so what I discovered is some interesting things. Number one, ranking well in Bing Maps specifically somewhat has some correlation to influencing the AI answers, ChatGPT and the other ones, but not a whole lot. And the interesting part is that when it comes to Google products specifically, so we'll just filter to only show, let's just look at Google specifically. And Google's the most interesting one because there's a clear correlation between ranking in the local pack and ranking in traditional search and your general performance in AI mode and Gemini. Okay. Gemini is a little bit different. I think AI mode's probably has a little more recency attached to it. It definitely relies more on the SERPs, it appears. But we can see here, there's definitely a correlation between performance in these two products and how you do in AI mode. So Gemini, not so much, only slightly, but definitely in AI mode. So one thing is very clear, as I'm going to be showing here in a second, is if you want better local SEO performance, start with the local pack. Optimize the local pack, optimize your Google business profile, drive reviews to your Google business profile, make sure you have an address in the target city that you're going after, cover all the basics. Okay. You have to do that. It's really, really important. After that, the next most logical place, we're just talking about Google here, is to focus on traditional search. Of the retrieval sources that we extracted, 60% of those retrieval sources were actual law firms. We actually have 3 law firms that are being used as top sources of retrieval in ChatGPT, okay, along with the directories and all the other stuff. Now, a couple interesting things here about local, specifically when it comes to AI answers. You're not going to find a whole lot of Reddit. You're not going to find a whole lot of Quora. So a lot of those studies that you see about like, oh, these are the top sources of retrieval, and they'll say, oh, it's Wikipedia and Reddit and Quora. Okay, that might be true for like huge national queries. But as soon as you start to get a little more granular, you start to break it down to the local level, that all breaks down. Okay. Because we see time and time again on the local level that it's the actual businesses that operate in those locations that are used in retrieval plus directories. Like that's easy. That's like 99% of retrieval sources. Okay. Now, funny enough, these websites that you see here, these pages that you see here are also those that rank very well in traditional search. Okay. These firms, look at how they're ranking in traditional search. They're ranking very, very well. They're all within the top 8 for this query. But on top of it, when you go and look at some of these other directories, all these directories rank super well in search as well. So what does that tell us? Well, it tells us, number one, we're going to focus on the local pack. Number two, we're going to go and attack these directories. Okay. So you can see here among the top directories for AI retrieval in this one example for legal, it's all the usual suspects. These are all the directories that everyone knows about if you've been doing legal SEO for any amount of time. Okay. But the difference here is that before, when we would go and optimize for citations or, do NAP cleanup and stuff like that, we were really doing it just to make sure that we had consistent NAP information across all of these platforms. But we're kind of entering a new era where you don't want to just kind of like do the basic level stuff for these platforms. I would highly recommend going into these platforms and treating them like their own individual SEO project. So go into Super Lawyers, for example. We'll go into one of these, or we'll even just do, we'll do Super Lawyers in this case. So we're going to go into here and, take one of these that's not a sponsored listing. We'll take like, this guy here. And what you want to do is you want to start to actually optimize this profile. Okay. Really, really stack in stack in the practice areas, like all of this stuff. You should be spending time really trying to enhance these profiles as much as possible with the intent to improve your rankings specifically on this section of Super Lawyers, specifically in this area. Okay. And the reason is because this is what's going to be used in retrieval. No one knows for sure, like what the AI does when it goes to a platform like this. Is it looking at like a certain amount? How long is it staying here? It's pretty hard to know, but in general, we know it is using this. So we don't know to what extent, we don't know the exact like quantity, but we do know that it is coming to this page, and that's clear, that's evident here. When you look at ChatGPT or you look at Grok or any of these other platforms, you will see these retrieval sources. So the point is number one, local pack. Number two, attack these directories and don't just do basic level stuff. Really try to optimize these listings. Now, if you want to go to the next level, I'll show you a real quick example. Okay. So in rankability specifically, what I would do is I'm going to go into the content optimizer, and you'll see the queries in here specifically for personal injury attorney or personal injury lawyer in Chesterfield, Missouri. Okay. So what I would do is I would come in here and I would write a description. I would create a unique description and make sure that I'm covering all of these entities. And then I would add that description to this profile. Then I'd go to the next directory listing and I would write another unique description. Now, to no surprise, you might be able to do this pretty quickly with AI. I'm just saying, okay? You should be able to pump these out pretty easily and be able to write completely unique descriptions for your law firm across every single one of these directories. So that way they are truly optimized to the fullest extent. Okay. So just a little tip that you can use on that front. So back to what we're talking about here, though, this is where things get interesting. Okay. Because like I mentioned, if you want to do well in Google, focus on Google products, focus on the local pack, focus on traditional search. However, as we start to enter some of the other platforms, things start to get really interesting. So just because you're doing well in Google, it will not necessarily translate to the other AI platforms. So a perfect example is this law firm right here. They are completely invisible in the ChatGPT answers that we pulled. Okay. However, if we go down here and we'll actually sort them so we can see their performance, you'll see that they have very good performance in Bing Maps. They have pretty good performance in Bing traditional search. They're doing well in Brave, and they're doing well in Google's AI mode, and they're actually doing pretty well in most Google products and the other ones. But for whatever reason in ChatGPT, they're not being recommended. Okay. So once again, this is proving that you cannot just, there's not a one strategy that's going to be applicable to every single platform. Because if that were the case, you could take one of these law firms that's absolutely crushing it. Let's say in ChatGPT, they should theoretically be number one across everything, right? But they're not. No, I have not to this day. And I've studied thousands and thousands and thousands of AI answers and traditional search results. I've lost count at this point. And I can tell you to this day, I have not seen a single brand that's number one across every single thing. You do not see that happen. It is so hard to do that. Because each of these platforms are using slightly nuanced systems. They're not exactly the same. So the days of just like, hey, here's our one Google SEO strategy and that's it. No, you can't do that. You do have to think per platform at this point. You do have to look at each of these platforms as completely separate projects and figure out, okay, why are we doing so poorly in Bing Maps compared to Google Maps? Why are we doing so poorly in Bing traditional search? Why? And you might be asking, why do I care about Bing? Okay, well, because Bing is used in retrieval for AI platforms. So we have to be visible on 3 core search engines: Google, Bing, and Brave. That's why I'm showing these, because we know that they're being used in retrieval for a lot of these AI answer platforms. Okay. So the point is don't, like, the days of just thinking about SEO, like kind of like tunnel vision on just Google traditional search. Like, it is a big piece to this whole equation, but there are other things going on here. And to become a really, really effective SEO in this new world, you do have to become a master of multiple platforms. You do have to understand how these platforms work to the fullest extent. They, on the front end, operate very similar, but across the board, we can clearly see there's a lot of distinctions. Okay. So I just wanted to show you this to show, like, there's a lot of gaps, a lot of work to be done. And so when people say, oh, SEO's dead, or, search is dead in general, that's just not true. Because the thing is, these businesses, like, good luck trying to do this yourself. That's all I can say. Like, I don't even really sell SEO services anymore. Okay. I'm just saying straight up, like, if I was a law firm and I wanted to do all this, I would be pretty concerned, because there's a lot of work to do. Okay. So let's look at a recap here. Let's just kind of cap this off. Okay. So if you want to do well in local, specifically AI search on the local level, there's 3 things we want to do. Number 1, we want to rank well in the local pack, Google's local pack. And kind of a subset of that. Also, you want to rank well in Bing Maps, like try to rank everywhere in any type of local based product. Okay. You should do that. Number 2, we want to attack all of the directories. Okay. We want to attack all the directories. We need to be present on the directories, but we also need to treat the directories as a separate SEO project that we have to, like, actually go and optimize. We have to actually take these profiles seriously. Okay. And then number 3, keep doing traditional SEO. You don't really do anything differently. If you're already doing SEO, just keep doing all the stuff that comes with that. And so if you do those 3 things well, it's going to be pretty much impossible not to see performance gains across these platforms. Now, the last piece, which just kind of is a subset of all this, which is drive reviews on your Google business profile. That's about 80% of your effort should be on the Google business profile. And the other 20% of your review generation should be on these platforms. Okay. Distribute reviews to these platforms, drive review diversity. That is what's going to drive that consensus around your client's brand. Okay. Now let's move on to the second thing here in the AI search report, which is answer engine optimization. So we've been talking about this already, but I want to just cover this very quickly, because unfortunately, I've just seen too much of this now at this point. I've been letting it slide. I've been seeing so much stuff about, the supposed differences between SEO and AEO. And people have been treating this. I've seen some people treating it as if it's a completely separate profession. And by the way, there's plenty of experts out there, or people that are, kind of on the forefront of AI SEO that are not doing this. So I'm not putting them in this bucket, but there's some people out there that are just not, they're just spreading some stuff that's a little, let's call it misinformation. Okay. So let's talk about it. Number 1. Okay. So it's probably easier for me to just cover what's actually different than what hasn't changed at all. Okay. So, as I mentioned already in this video, all the stuff I talked about is stuff that we've all been doing for a really long time, and you should just keep doing it. Okay. But there are some distinct differences, and they aren't necessarily, about the tactics. It's more about the measurement and the structure of the things that we're doing. Okay. So let's kind of walk through these. I've intentionally blacked these out so we can go one by one. Okay. So first one here, go ahead and change this, is tracking. Okay. So the way that we tracked for SEO was pretty simple for the most part. Okay. You'd install Google Analytics, you'd install Google Search Console. You would set up Google Analytics so you could actually track conversions from organic search there. And then you'd probably do some individual keyword tracking just to make sure you're kind of showing up for your most critical commercial keywords. You're probably tracking overall organic search. So, your keyword footprint growing over time, you're going to be tracking that. Obviously in Google Analytics, you're going to be tracking organic search traffic. And as far as the total organic keyword footprint, you'd be tracking that in Google Search Console. And then finally, if you're doing local, you might do some grid tracking as well to make sure that you're covering a lot of geo areas. So that was basically it. Now, those are kind of like the lagging metrics. The leading metrics were also pretty simple as well. Like, how many pages are we optimizing? How many pages are we creating? How many referring domains are we acquiring? And then some technical SEO related stuff. Okay. So tracking was a lot easier for SEO, at least, quote unquote, easier. But now the AI and tracking AI answers has kind of changed. It's added an element of tracking that we didn't do before. Okay. And that element is tracking two things in particular. Okay. So number one, we're looking at the actual AI answer. So when you run commercial prompts like this one, we're tracking, does the brand actually show up in this answer? Okay. Simple as that. So number one, it's a yes or no. Did they show up? Yes or no? And that's it. Okay. Then you run that same exact question across all the AI platforms, right? And then you ask that same, did we show up? And then you can get a nice view of like, okay, we're on AI mode, but we're invisible on ChatGPT. We're on Perplexity, but we're invisible on Claude. And you get a nice overview. Then you do that same thing, at least 25 to 50 times, okay, to get a really good overview, because this isn't like traditional keyword tracking. You need a lot of surface area to get a good understanding. Okay. Then from there, the next question within the answer is where are we positioned in this response? Okay. So if we're number one, clearly we're good to go, right? But if we're all the way down here, we're number 7. Why? Why are we being recommended number 7 while these guys are being recommended number 1? From there, we can start to study the competitors and see, okay, what are they doing differently than us? Where are our gaps? Where are our deficits? And how do we narrow those gaps? Okay. Simple as that. Okay. So those are the things we're looking at. We're looking at, are we present and where are we positioned among the competitors? All right. So that's the first thing. This is the most important thing to track. You want to track this across every platform, and this is critical. The second piece of this, though, are the citations. Citations are not the thing. These are not the goal. Okay. And this is the biggest misconception I've seen. I've seen some people talk about, oh, rank your content in ChatGPT, or you want to rank, you want to be cited and I know cited is being used loosely. I guess you could argue, your brand being here as being cited, quote unquote. It's more like being recommended, in the answer, but just debating semantics here. But the point is what it definitely isn't is this should not be the goal per se. This is a leading goal for the primary goal, which is to actually show up in the answer. So these citations, as I showed you earlier in this video, are the collateral that we can use, the material, the raw material that we can study to ultimately understand how this AI answer came about, right? How did it come here? Okay. So let me clarify a couple things here. I'm talking purely about when retrieval is used. Okay. If retrieval is not used, which is very rare these days when it comes to these types of queries, retrieval is almost always used for any type of local query or any commercial query. Retrieval seems to be used most of the time. But something that is not using retrieval, that's going to be completely based on the latest training model, right? So, ChatGPT 5.1 or GPT 5.1, whenever that cutoff date, if you were not baked into that static corpus, you're not going to be able to do anything here. Okay. But for most of us who are doing client campaigns, commercial queries are going to be the primary focus, which means retrieval is going to be the main thing that we need to be thinking about. So two things that are happening here when a search is conducted. The static corpus is the first step, then retrieval is the second step. If the AI is not confident that it can answer accurately without hallucinating based on what it has inside of the static corpus. So then it will go and do retrieval. Okay. Once again, we are tracking the citations for a few reasons. Number one, our own brand can be used as a source, and a source of retrieval. As we can see here, we can see this brand is recommended number 1 and they are the source of retrieval. Okay. This is like, a perfect example where, if they didn't have their site optimized for SEO, they would have never had this chance to be recommended by ChatGPT. Okay. So it shows your website still is very, very important to influence these answers. Okay. But secondly, we also want to be looking at these other sources of retrieval to see if we are present. Okay. So obviously we're not going to be present on our competitors' websites, but we can certainly be present on FindLaw and all the directories. Okay. So we are tracking citations for that reason, only because they're the food, they're the meat, they're the material, the raw material that's used to influence the AI answers. Okay. So we want to be tracking both of those things. So that's one of the biggest changes, is definitely the tracking side. Obviously, we didn't have to track any of this because it didn't exist. So now you need to. It's very important. And that brings me to the next point, which I've kind of already explained here, but it's very hard to win with just your website. Okay. Like, the lower competition the queries are, the easier it is to do that. But as soon as that competition starts to ramp up, especially on the national level, you're probably not, like, your website's likely not going to be one of the sources of retrieval. And even if it is, the AI will have a lot more to work with, a lot more raw material to play with. So then it's not going to put as much weight on your one source of retrieval compared to a lower competition query. So we've been seeing this a lot. Okay. So the point is your website matters a lot, but don't just like get hyper focused on just your website. You have to think about the broad consensus around the brand that you're trying to improve visibility for inside of these AI platforms. And then also the AI answers are non-deterministic, okay, which causes a lot of answer and citation volatility. For example, we can go and just take this exact query, okay, just a real quick example. We'll run a new chat, we'll go incognito, and we'll run this one, okay? Then I'll do the same thing. Let's go chat, another one here. We'll go incognito. We'll run the same exact one, okay? Let's do this, okay? You can see my messy desktop. All right, here we go. So we'll run these simultaneously at the same time. Same exact query, incognito window, same model, okay? No personalization technically, even though in a real life environment there would be personalization. We're going to see that, there's going to be some similarities here more than likely, but you can see that even the reasoning process, even the process the AI is going through is slightly different, right? If we look at here, you can see that thinking process. We'll look here and you'll see slightly different, still using some similar sources, but you can tell this one only spent about 12 seconds. This one's going extensively longer, okay? Showing that there's no like perfect rhyme or reason for a lot of this, all right? And that's because of this non-deterministic behavior. Once again, same exact query, different results, all right? And we can see this. Not wildly different, still within reason, but you can see like Crew's law here is number 2, but they're number 1 here. We got Nichols at number 2, we got Nichols at number 3 here, okay? And then so on and so forth. So this is why I've already said this, but when you're trying to get a realistic understanding of brand visibility on these platforms, you have to run a lot of prompts. If you just run one, it's going to be very difficult. You need to run at least 25 to 50 for any particular business to get that broad view. You have to kind of disconnect from the keyword tracking model and think more like, I need to cover as much surface area as possible to truly understand. Like if I was working with, Meyercord, for example, I would want to know, how are they performing across all of these prompts, across all of these platforms? Okay. So if you do the math on this, it gets pretty crazy, but you would want to be looking at, like, let's say you ran 10 unique prompts on ChatGPT. You'd want to run those same exact prompts on Google AI mode, Google Gemini, Claude, Perplexity, Grok, Microsoft Copilot. Like, you want to run them all across, because then you're going to have very rich data. And you don't have to do this all the time, but you need to do it so you can at least establish a baseline to understand where you stand right now. Okay. So I cannot stress that enough. You need a lot of surface area. Okay. All right. Let's go back to this. So because of that non-deterministic behavior, you just have to expect volatility. And this is why you need to be tracking it, whether manually or through a tool. We have a tool coming out on Rankability that will track this for you. So if you're trying to scale this out, but you can manually track this. It just takes a long time. Okay. All right. Next one here, which also throws in a wrench into tracking, which is extreme personalization. Okay. When you go into ChatGPT, if you don't turn off personalization, it's going to be, it's going to say you're the best business in the world and you're the smartest person that's ever existed. Okay. You don't listen to it. It's designed to be nice to you. It's designed to tell you what you want to hear. So with personalization, though, that causes people to get to have inaccurate tracking at the end of the day. Okay. So for example, if I were to go into ChatGPT and I would ask, what are the best SEO tools right now? It's going to say Rankability is one of the best SEO tools. But if I go and run this in a completely independent account with none of my history, none of my personalization. We may rank somewhere maybe in the top 10 or something, but we're definitely not going to rank number one because there's a lot of competition, right? And we're still a new tool. So the point is that personalization really throws some interesting elements into this tracking process. So just be, when it comes to tracking, don't trust any software or person or anything that claims to have perfect tracking. It's very, very hard to get perfect tracking. In fact, it's way harder to get good tracking data with AI answers compared to just traditional SEO. Okay. Much, much different. Okay. Then another one that's definitely unique in some ways are prompts versus just standard long tail queries. Okay. So long tail queries are not new. Everyone knows about long tail queries, have been around forever. But the difference here is how people are, how queries have changed because of AI platforms. Queries have gotten longer and longer and longer, especially when if you use your phone, you're using the voice. Like I might go on a walk with ChatGPT and I might give a full dissertation for a query. Okay. And then I submit that thing. All right. So it's just very different now. And the queries are significantly longer. And anyone that argues that they aren't, that would just be silliness. Like no one is searching plumber Chesterfield, Missouri in ChatGPT. They're probably searching my toilet just blew up. And I don't know what to do. I live in Chesterfield. I don't really have a big budget. And I need to have a plumber come out in the next 24 hours because there's water and sewage all over my bathroom. Okay. That's the type of query that's going on in these platforms. Okay. So it's not that simple anymore. But the good news is, which I'll show you here in a second, is like the AI platforms, one thing that they're incredibly good at, which I don't think they get enough credit for, is like, I'll show you, I'll go into Grok. Okay. And I know I'm dumping a lot on you today, but this is just like, I've been deep on this. All right. So go into Grok here, for example, and with Grok, you can actually see how some of the reasoning actually occurs. And go into web search. And I think it actually, it had it originally, and I don't think it's showing anymore, but it was showing basically, it was showing the reasoning process that it was going through. It was showing the query fan out process, which I'll be talking about here in a second. But basically what query fan out does is no matter what the complexity of this query is, the AI will take that query and it will break it down into a very simple query if it's going to use retrieval. So it kind of simplifies the query. So that, and then it will go through this series of different queries, which is this concept of query fan out, which is basically just a series of searches that are relevant. So then it can enhance this response better. Okay. So this is why, like, on the technical side of things, that intense prompt that you're giving it, it's not like all of a sudden you need to go create, a different piece of content for every little single thing that ever existed. You don't need to do that. That's not necessary, because the AI platform is still going to take that insane amount of context, dumb it down and simplify it and compress it. And then if it has to use retrieval, it's going to use very simple queries for retrieval. Okay. So just a different time with that as well. All right. Next one here is reverse engineering citations. As I talked about pretty extensively here, the citations, this is the work that has to be done. Okay. The answer is the outcome, but the citations are the work. This is what we need to focus on. This is what we need to reverse engineer. This is what we need to spend almost all of our time on. Okay. Because we need to figure out, okay, why are these competitors ranking so well? Figure that out. Number two, why are these citations popping up, and are we present on these citations? So if the answer is no, you go and do the work that's necessary. Okay. Okay. Next one here is retrieval not exclusive to search engines. Okay. This is a big misconception. I've been seeing this floating around a lot about AEO is like, doing AEO is just SEO because, search engines are the only source of retrieval. But that's not true. Retrieval is a general concept that is not specific to just search engines. Search engines are just one database that can be retrieved, but there can be retrieval directly inside of ChatGPT as well. If you create projects and you upload files, ChatGPT will prioritize those files for retrieval first before it goes and uses RAG, right? So It's not just about that. There's a lot of sources of retrieval. In fact, there's even direct retrieval inside of ChatGPT. If you put a domain in now, it will actually retrieve directly to the website. If you say, tell me what this page is all about, it can actually go and retrieve that now. That is actually possible. So don't think that this is just one particular thing that it can retrieve from, which is search. It can retrieve from a lot of stuff. Okay. So the point is, once again, you need to be everywhere. You need to be thinking about that. It's not just about, ranking in search engines. That's a big piece. It's probably the number one source of retrieval, to be honest, but there's probably 10% or more of other things that it might retrieve from. Okay. All right. Optimizing your brand visibility and answers, not clicks. Okay. So this is once again a very unique characteristic of AEO, which is, unfortunately, we're not really doing this to drive direct traffic. If you happen to get some traffic through a citation, that's great. But as you can tell, these platforms are not built to prioritize citations or clicks, right? First of all, they gray out the links, so they don't even look that noticeable. And by default, the sources are hidden. So clicks are going to become more scarce over time with these platforms. You're not going to all of a sudden be getting more traffic from these platforms. It's just not the way that any of these platforms will ever work. What you can do though is get more brand visibility. And if you're in here, MyAccord Law, and you're like, okay, that looks like a good law firm. I want to learn more about them. So maybe you just pop into Google, boom, you search them. You just did a branded search. You're like, oh, that's cool. They actually have, they have 400 Google reviews. That's pretty good. I'm going to go check them out and give them a quick call. Okay. So that process that I just went through is like very difficult to track. Okay. Incredibly difficult. But what you can do is you can track branded search queries inside of Google Search Console specifically and see how those are growing over time. And unfortunately, when it comes to, AEO, for example, tracking is tough. Really tough at this point. All you can do is really track your general presence across these platforms, but tracking direct conversions from AI, that's really difficult. Okay. All right. And the next one here is doing well in locals pack doesn't necessarily translate to ChatGPT visibility. You already know that. We've already talked about that today. And then finally, you don't need reviews or consensus to rank in Google SERPs, but you need it to be recommended as a brand in AI answers. Okay. So very quick example here. Let's go into search St. Louis SEO and you'll see I have this brand here. Okay. This site has been ranking for years, literally for years. It just doesn't move. It's a, very keyword rich domain, which works really well for traditional SERPs, by the way. And I've been ranking for St. Louis SEO for probably since 2013. Okay. I've been literally, you can go back and look. I've literally been ranking either my old website, gotchaseo.com, or this site, since 2013. So this has been a very long-term operation. I know a lot about these queries. I know all the players. I know a lot about this one, but here's what's interesting. I've been ranking for a long time. There's a lot of historical data showing that I'm ranking, but go into AI mode and we'll search St. Louis SEO. Keep the same query. This is not how people would search in AI mode, but just for the sake of the argument, we'll go here and you'll see it doesn't exist, right? This site does not exist. So therefore, if it was just about ranking well in Google and that would just solve all your problems, then I should have no problem here. I should be ranking number one, no issues, right? Because I crush everyone for that query. But once again, I don't, right? Now, why is that? Because look at the sources of retrieval, right? It's not just pulling from the top ranking results. It's using query fan out. It's using different queries to go and find the consensus around particular brands. It's using Google business profiles, as I've mentioned. So it is not that simple. Okay. I wish it was. I wish it was just rank in Google and everything was easier, but that's not the case, because on top of it, to rank that EMD, that, keyword rich domain, I didn't need reviews. I didn't need consensus. I didn't need anything. All I needed was a very well optimized, it's a one pager, by the way, a very well optimized page and backlinks. That's it. And that's how I rank in traditional SERPs. And so those mechanisms are not enough to influence AI. If you just create content and build backlinks, that'll certainly help you in traditional, but it's not the only mechanism you have to use to influence the AI. You also need reviews. You also need consensus. You also need your brand to be present across many different platforms. Okay. And the final one, which I've mentioned already significantly here, is query fan out. Okay. So this is not necessarily anything that's really new as far as like a tactical thing. You should have already been attacking multiple variants of different keywords to build topical authority, but it's really about the underlying tech of what these platforms do. Okay. So like I mentioned, they will take a query that has significant context and break it down into a more simple query. They'll run that query through search, and then it won't just stop there. It will then continue to run multiple queries after that as far as that search process. So basically, if you want to really simplify what it is, it's the AI is just searching for you. Okay. It's just searching for you, right? You don't have to do it. You're just going and doing it now. So this is the big difference, which is like with AI, you're not really doing the searching anymore. The AI is doing the searching for you. So, and that means even some of the traffic that's coming to your website isn't really real traffic. Okay. And that's where things start to get really weird. I'll get into that today, but this is definitely a different time.